All right, welcome everybody to part 2 of how I created the In Your House animated music video by The Cure. If you happen to miss part 1, simply click the link above and take a quick peek. That was a very short video. I actually uploaded it as a short, and in that video I went over how I came up with the overall concept, the aesthetic, the color grading, and the development of the very first scene. So if you're having a hard time getting started, take a look at that video. It will help you out a lot. Let's get right into it. So in this video today, what I plan to go over is all of the tools that I use in the creation of the In Your House video by The Cure, why I use those tools, how I use those tools, as well as how I came up with the different concept or look for the characters in this animated music video. So this is kind of where we left off in the part 1 of this series, where I had decided that I wanted to go with this as my initial scene. I wanted a ghostly impression-like type of aesthetic, and here are all of the images that were created within Midjourney. Now originally I did want people walking right to left. So as you see here, we have some that are working straight towards the house, others that are walking right to left. But ultimately, I really decided upon this video, or this image for this video, and that's because I really liked the proximity of this woman and decided that I would push past her through the crowd to the door, and then the door would open, and that would be the entrance into, or the introduction to, our first couple in the scene. However, I did want to kind of zoom out a little bit more from her so that I can get basically more of a push-in zoom. So when I did that inside of Midjourney, you can see I came up, this one has some type of aberration at the top, this has some kind of writing. You have two women, which I thought would distract the viewer. You have this one, which actually has a wall in the middle of the street, which doesn't seem to make any sense. And this one actually ended up being pretty perfect. Now, for some reason, when I decided to animate this inside of Midjourney, I was not able to get the exact look that I wanted. So let me show you what those animations came out like. So here we go. Here are the 4 animations. And to be honest with you, let me explain why I use Midjourney's animation for quite a few of the scenes. So in essence, Midjourney is actually pretty good at looking at the initial frame and determining what are the best camera angles or camera movements for that particular scene, especially if you happen to use their auto, right down here, auto animate feature. I found it to be pretty accurate and pretty good. And when animating for simple camera movements such as a push, a pull, a pan left, a pan right, or sometimes even a dolly shot, it works fairly well. But I tend not to get that specific, because usually for Midjourney, I'm using it for very, very simplistic camera movements, and it kind of has them figured out. Now, I was not able to get the full motion of the door opening, which would transition into the initial scene. So what I ended up having to do was use a frame, an image as the first frame inside of Google Veo. Now, here it is right here, and let me explain to you when and how I use Google Veo. So nowadays you see a lot of people using Veo 3 for the videos. And while I think it's a great tool, I don't think it is always necessary for a few reasons. So for example, if you do not need lip syncing, if you do not need any type of dialogue or monologue to be crazily accurate, you can get by with using Veo 2 Fast or even Veo 3 Fast. And most of the time, Veo 2 Fast is actually pretty good. The only time I would probably use quality in Veo 3 or even Veo 2 is if I'm really doing some type of high-end production. I really need things to be as realistic as possible. But in this video, everything is pretty much animated. So as you can see here, Veo 2 Fast works actually pretty good. And it's only 20 credits per generation as opposed to 100 credits per generation. Now, I want to stress that I initially had started off with the Ultra plan, which was for 3 months, $124.99. Then it switches to about $250 per month. I used it for 1 month, had about 12,500 credits, and I did not create enough to even eat up 12,500 credits. So I downgraded to the Pro plan, which is 1,000 credits, and decided that a lot of my generations were going to be using only 20 credits per generation, and I didn't really have a lot of projects coming up that would warrant me using 100 credits per generation with Veo 3 quality or Veo 2 quality. So I just downgraded and then bought additional credits as needed. And I also tend to use about 5 or 6 different type of generators when I'm making my short films. I think that there is some strength in that. That's because each one has their own set of strengths and weaknesses, and Veo, as good as it is not the be-all, end-all for actually creating some cinematic work. You have Seedance, you have Kling, you have Hailu, which are really coming up with a lot of great physical movement in their animations, if that's the right thing to say. But anyway, let's get right back to Veo, generating the videos with Veo. So here is the initial frame that I used from Midjourney, and the prompt was very simple. The camera slowly pushes through an ethereal crowd until it reaches the front door, which slowly opens. And this is what it came up with. And I really like that. I really like that. So that became the initial frame in the video, which you see when you first start, or initial scene when you start watching the video. So now I needed to transfer from being outside of the house into the interior of the house. And as I mentioned, I wanted a couple that seemed to be distant. So my next step was to go back to Gemini, basically say, I need a prompt for inside the house, and explain everything, where the woman is sitting, what her actions are, where the man is, where he's standing, and the overall aesthetics for the house. But one thing I did not do was I did not specify the age of my actors. And as you can see, when I did the generations, it came up with this one, which was actually pretty good. However, I really don't see the man in that image. And remember, if we're doing a constant push, then I'm going to need like a back door or something. And right here, I don't see any back door. Excuse me. Let's go to the next image. So here you can see I have an elderly woman, so I did not specify the age in my prompt. So you do need to be as detailed in your prompt as possible. Here's another one, pretty good, but I don't see a back door that is a straight push, and I don't see the guy, and the woman is not even facing the camera, so that's going to make it really difficult as far as camera movements go. Wow, came up with this one. I really liked this one, and despite the man's leg kind of being missing a little bit, I figured it was some good prompting and movement prompts, animation prompts, whatever you want to call them, that I'd be able to kind of hide that little aberration in this image. As you look in retrospect, actually some pretty good ones. Here's another one I really liked. I could push past the guy, go through the back door, enter in through another home. Here's another one that would not work because he's up the stairs, and quite honestly, we're not going to go, up the stairs and then back around and try to find an exit or something like that, so that didn't work. Here's another one was actually really good, and in retrospect, I could have used this. But, I decided upon this initial one right here. So that became my upscaled image. And then I asked through the automation with low movement. So you'll find it right here, low motion, auto low. This is what it came up with. So now it just becomes a matter of personal preference and what you think is going to work next. Now, one of the things I want you to point out, and these are some things you really need to pay attention to. Her mouth is moving in this one, and there's no dialogue. So unless, a fly went in her mouth or she's trying to gasp for air, no, that one's not going to work. All right, then you have this one right here, but you have this person moving in the background. And a lot of emphasis is on the woman, not on the following shot that I want to accomplish. So that one did not work. Here's another one. So the person in the background doesn't look like they're really moving, and she happens to turn and then look at the guy, which I'm like, you know what? That's pretty powerful. So let's go with that movement. And that was going to be my reference frame for the next generation. Now, how did I accomplish that? So one thing you have to do when you're creating an animated music video is always be thinking about your next shot. How are you going to frame it so that the shots have a very nice, smooth transition from one into the other. The challenges I see with many people out there is that they will put a prompt into Veo directly and just kind of let it guide them the entire way. And to be honestly, I have a problem with that actually being called filmmaking when, I just do. And I don't think that you yield the best results. Always be thinking about how you are going to frame your next shot. Now, one thing I did to do that was I actually did a very simple thing, and that was go to the lyrics of the song. So as you can see here, there's only 12 lines in the song, and it's broken up into 4 very distinct scenes, as I would call them. So this made it pretty easy. So I knew that I would want one couple for every single scene in this song, or every single verse in this song. So that would mean 1 couple, 2 couples, 3 couples, 4 couples, and the outro. And I tended to be guided by the words. The hours I take go so slow. I hear no sound in your house, and I drown at night in your house. So those very specific things in the words kind of guided my image generation, and that's how I was able to decide what the second scene was going to be like. So because I was only able to get Midjourney to do a certain amount of camera push, I decided to go back to Gemini and see if I could create an image based off of this image from Midjourney. And what I wanted to do was create an image that was focused on this back door. So all I did was I really had to explain to Gemini what the following shot was. And that's why I say always know what your following shot is going to be. So I uploaded this and said I need to replicate everything from this picture that is past the man. So I create an image in Midjourney to allow me to use Veo to push the camera to the back door. So it gave me a prompt right here. I put it into Midjourney, and this is what I came up with. Perfect. This is exactly past the guy. So this was in essence going to be my end frame, and then this is going to be the end frame, and this video would act as the beginning of that entire shot. And that's how I was able to actually use Veo to push past the woman, past the guy, to the door, to transition into the next shot. So I really want to keep this video in digestible bites and not really go into each part in too much detail. So next time I'm going to actually show you the following shot, how I created that and how I created the transition from the first scene into the next scene, and how I use Gemini to actually create the prompts, both the image prompts and the movement prompts for the following scenes. If this was helpful to you, please hit that like button, that subscribe button. Feel free to share it with anybody you think this might help. And as always, hit that bell so you can be notified when part 3 comes out so you don't miss a beat. All right, thanks a lot for watching and look forward to seeing you next time.